This message is entitled Walking in Unity and was given on October the 2nd, 2016 at the First Baptist Church of Dexter in Dexter, Missouri. The speaker is Pastor Jay Scribner, Executive Director of Here's Hope America. This message was recorded and edited by the First Baptist Church of Dexter's Media Department and is being used by permission of the First Baptist Church of Dexter in Dexter, Missouri.
Greg, thank you so much. We are really proud of these young people and their relationship they've established with Jesus Christ, and then to take this first step of obedience. We used to have a stool in Branson in the baptistry as well. It wasn't for the baptismal candidates, it was for the pastor. Hey, let's give an applause to our kids that are leaving. Great to see you here today, and we appreciate Pastor Greg and Pastor Neil. Wow. And choir, what a great, great job. Let's say, give praise to God again. You have a wonderful music ministry and a tremendous staff, and so just keep praying for them. Take your Bibles, please, and turn, if you will, to the book of Ephesians chapter 4, and get your listening sheet out with a pen or pencil so that you can take some notes as we go throughout our message today. Ephesians chapter 4, what a wonderful book. It's a book written to, for, and about the church. Just filled with tremendous church theology that is so beneficial to us. We're in chapter 4, and the first 3 chapters of the book of Ephesians. Paul relates about God's redemption. He talks about God's grace. He reveals in chapter 3 about the mystery of the church. What a deep theological principle that is. And then in chapter 3, picking up with verse 14, it looks like, he offers a prayer. He offers a prayer for the church, and that's a tremendous prayer. And then he goes directly from that prayer into chapter 4, where he says, therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord. Now, you probably know the rule of thumb about when you're reading Scripture and you come to the word therefore, you need to find out what it's there for. And it always refers back to something that he's related, and the reality is what this therefore refers back to is what I just shared with you, the whole first 3 chapters of this amazing book. And then he says, therefore I, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you. That word beseech means to invite. It means to implore. It means to call near. And so he moves into chapter 4 and he says, all right, now, move in a little closer here, church. He says, come on, give me your ears here and listen up. Wow. He's about ready to share something else pretty neat with us, because he's imploring us. He's beseeching us. He's saying, all right, now move in a little closer here. Move in a little closer. Well, I'm pretty excited about what he's going to share with us, because he says, all right, now, listen up. He says, I beseech you. And then he says, I beseech you that you would walk worthy. Say those 2 words with me. Walk worthy. As it becomes. Walk worthy means as it becomes. Now, we know from this context, he's saying, and you'll understand this here in a few minutes, but he's saying that you'd walk worthy, or as it becomes a Christian. As it becomes a Christian. He's saying, all right, listen up here. I want to talk to you about your walk, that it ought to be like a Christian. So just as it becomes a Christian, that's the way you need to live it out. And then we know, going down to verse 3, he says it has to do with keeping the unity. He's saying that we need to walk in unity. And that's the title of the message today. Because that's what he's saying here, that you walk as it becomes a Christian, and let your walk be in unity. Say that word with me. Unity. Unity. All right? Walk worthy and walk in unity. I was studying from one of my favorite theologians some time ago, Charlie Brown. And Charlie and Lucy were sitting on a couch watching TV. Now, I need to give a caveat here, especially for our young people scattered throughout. A long time ago, young people, when we were watching TV, we didn't have one of these things. We didn't have a remote control. Now, I know that just sounds crazy, but that's the way some of us were raised. We were from that era. Now, when I raised this up a while ago, most of the men, your heart started pumping a little fast. You're sitting there thinking, oh, he actually brought it to church. Can I have it? No, you can't. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the sermon, but I just thought of this. Do you know that they've done some research, and up to 3 weeks, a man's thumb keeps going like this up to 3 weeks after he's dead. I don't really know why I told you that, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the sermon. All right, now Charlie and Lucy were sitting on the couch watching TV, and Lucy said to Charlie, "Charlie, get up and change the channel." Now Charlie looks at Lucy and says, "Well, how come I got to get up and do it? Why can't you do it?" And Lucy said, "Charlie Brown, you see those 5 fingers? When I put them together like this, they become a massive force of destruction. Now get up and change the channel." Now the next box shows Charlie standing in front of the television, and Charlie is looking at his hand, and he says, "How come you guys can't ever get together like that?" We need to get together. Not to become a massive force of destruction, but to become a massive force for the sake of Jesus Christ and the gospel, huh? Yeah. We need to get together. Well, we're looking at verses 1, 2, and 3. Sometime today, why don't you read verses 1 through 16. I wish we had time to just develop that whole section right there, because it all has to do with unity. And the first 6 verses of this chapter have to do with foundational unity. And then beginning with verse 7, going through verse 16, it has to do with functional unity. And so I would encourage you to sometime today read all 16 verses of chapter 4. But we're just going to have time to look at verses 1, 2, and 3, where Paul says, "Therefore I, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you're called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long-suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep," now here's this word, "the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace." Let me give you 4 things. You've got them on your listening sheet there. 4 things from these 3 verses of Paul's exhortation to the church about walking in unity. First of all, it has to do with your calling. Your calling. That's number 1. And verse 1 says, "Therefore I, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy," look at this, "of the vocation." Of the vocation wherewith you're called. So if anyone asks you, "What's your vocation?" "I'm Christian. I'm a Christian." That'll throw them for a loop. What's your vocation? Because that's what it is. That's what we need to be busy about being. That's why he says there that you walk worthy, as it becomes what you are. So, what's your vocation? I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. You see, whatever job you got, that's just something God's given you to put food on the table and to pay your bills. That's not your real purpose in life, folks. That's not your real vocation. Your real vocation is your calling from God to be a Christian. That's it. And so he says, I gather in here, close by here, and I want to exhort you that you walk worthy as it becomes a Christian, so that day in, day out, moment by moment, wherever you happen to be, at home, at church, at school, on the job, when you're socializing, and just go ahead and be what you are, and that is a Christian. He says that you walk worthy of that. That you be what you are. Because you've been called to be a Christian. You've been called to be a saint. God calls us that. I heard about 2 reprobate brothers. I think they might have been from Stoddard County. Don't know. Not sure. I mean, these guys were bad guys. These were wicked guys, and they had that reputation all over the county. They were 2 of the raunchiest men that ever across the county line. And everybody knew it. Now, the older of those two brothers died, and the younger brother went to the local Baptist pastor to see if he would preach his older brother's funeral. And the pastor was real hesitant. He said, man, alive, with your reputation. He said, I'm not sure I really want to be associated with you guys. And the younger brother said, listen, my brother's dead. He just needs a funeral. I'm looking for a preacher to do that. And he was still quite hesitant. The Baptist preacher was still pretty hesitant about doing it. And so then the younger brother said, all right, listen, preacher, if you'll preach my brother's funeral, he said, I'll give you $1,000. And the Baptist pastor said, well, everybody does deserve a good funeral. And so he agreed to do the funeral. And as the younger brother was leaving his office, he turned to the pastor and he said, hey, listen, preacher, he said, if I'm going to pay you that kind of money, he said, at the funeral, I want you to call my brother a saint. So come time for the funeral, the preacher walks up to the podium. The coffin's right there, and the younger brother's sitting over here, and the preacher stands up and he says, ladies and gentlemen, he said, I think we are all aware that the man lying in this coffin was a vile, wicked man. There's probably not anything he wouldn't do or hasn't done. He's a reprobate. He literally is one of the worst men ever to live on the face of this earth. But I'm here to tell you that compared to his younger brother right over here, he was a saint. Now listen, we're saints not by comparison. Everybody with me on that one? It's real easy to look around and find someone that's living a lot worse than we are. So God's called us to be saints. He's called us to be Christian. And that's what he's saying here. You're calling. And Paul says, listen, just go out and be who you are. Day in and day out, 24/7, 365, just be who you are. You're a Christian. Walk worthy as it becomes a Christian. Go out and be that. Everybody with me on this? All right, here's number 2. This is Paul's exhortation to us. It has to do with your calling. Secondly, it has to do with your character. Has to do with your character. Verse 2 says that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you're called. Verse 2, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering. So he gives us some character traits here that we're to have. 3 specific. He says with all lowliness, and that word means an humbleness of mind. It means humility. And folks, if you really stop to, we shouldn't have to think very long and hard to realize, listen, if God hadn't caught up with us, if God hadn't reached out to us, if God hadn't sent his son Jesus, and if Jesus hadn't loved us enough to die on the cross, where would we all be? My friend, we'd be on a straight path to hell. We'd be on a straight path to eternal damnation, eternal separation from God. All of us. That ought that ought to give every one of us a sense of humility, a sense of gratefulness to God, a sense of deep, eternal appreciation. When's the last time you've just honestly just bowed your head and said, God, I don't understand it, but I sure want to thank you for loving me and thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for covering my sins. And Jesus, thank you for dying in my place. I'm afraid we don't do that enough. So he's talking about our character here. He says with all lowliness. And then he says, we're in verse 2, and meekness. A lot of times we don't understand that word meekness. A lot of times we think that that means weakness. And the reality is it's really just the opposite of weakness. It means great strength. Great strength, but it's strength under control. Say that phrase with me. Strength under control. Say that again. Strength under control. That's what that word meekness means. It's the pictures would be like a racehorse, a great stallion, a stallion. But that stallion has a bit in his mouth and a bridle, so that the rider of that powerful horse, the rider is controlling that horse. So it's strength under control. Or a picture of a huge ship with a massive engine. Kay and I had the opportunity to traverse the Panama Canal one time, and we got more than once had a wonderful privilege of riding in this huge cargo ship going through the canal, and they took us into the engine room. Well, it was an engine cavity. It was huge. It was 5 stories. The engine itself was 5 stories high. And you think of these huge ships that are controlled by a rudder. That's the picture here. Strength. Christian, saint, not weak, not weakness. That's not it at all. It's just the opposite. Matter of fact, it's great strength that you have. But it's under control. All right, so we're talking about these character traits, and so he says with lowliness, with meekness, and then with long-suffering. Long-suffering. This is verse 2. And that means patience and fortitude. And so he's saying to us, hey, Christian, stick with it. Stick with it. You did good yesterday. You're doing good today. You're going to do good tomorrow. Stick with it. Got to have patience. Got to have fortitude. We're going to keep on going. You ever had days when you think, oh, Lord, how long do I keep on going? And God says, keep on going. Keep on going. You're doing good. You're doing okay. And you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to do it again. Keep it up. When's it going to end? It ain't going to end. There's going to be a day when you transfer from this life into the next, into eternity, and your faith will be made sight. You quit breathing here on earth, and the next breath you take is in the presence of Jesus Christ. You okay with that? Yeah. Because you've got the fortitude, you've got the patience, with humility and with meekness. You're going to keep on going day by day. Well, how am I going to live? As becometh your vocation. By the way, have I ever asked you this? What is your vocation? As becometh your vocation. All right, here's the third thing, letter C. So he talks about your calling, he talks about your character, and then he talks about your concern. Look at the last part of verse 2. He says, with all lowliness and meekness and long suffering. Then he says, forbearing one another in love. That word forbear is Hunter. Hunter here? You up there, Bubba? There you are, back there. Come on up here, man. Come on up here. And I need another high school guy. Come on down, guys. Just somebody come on. Yeah, hurry on down here. I'm on the clock. Hey, come on up here, Hunter. Man, it's great to see you. You doing all right?
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to embarrass you. That should relieve you just a little bit. Remind me of your name.
Jake.
Hi, Jake. Okay, Hunter and Jake. You guys, this has to do with the word forbear. The word forbear. Okay? So you guys come together here and get back to back, if you would, please. One facing that way, one facing that way. Okay, good deal. Now, lean up against each other there. Okay. Now, I need you to keep your backs together and your shoulders together like you have them, but I need you to sort of step away with your feet from each other. There you go. A little further. All right, now don't pull a trick on each other, all right? All right, stay with me here. This is a beautiful picture. You got it? Hunter and Jake are doing a great job because they're explaining to you, illustrating to you what the word forbear means. Stick with it, guys. Now, here's the deal. In the Christian life and in church, instead of doing like this, or when we see people like that, and I'm not going to do this because you guys are bigger than I am, all right? I don't mind telling you it's a little tempting, but I'm not. But in church, a lot of times, we think it's okay to come and knock the props out. Okay, if you guys can figure out how to get out of that, you're okay, okay? Hey, all right, that's great. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Now, here's what the word forbear means. Here's what the word forbear means. To hold oneself up against another. Let me say that again. To hold oneself up against another. Now, they illustrated this beautifully. Do you ever get to the place in your life when you need somebody to lean on? I ought to write a song like that. Are you? Am I the only one that ever gets in a valley like that to where you just feel like you need somebody to? Where should we be able to go to do that? We ought to go to family. We ought to go to brothers and sisters in Christ, we ought to be able to go to church. And when we go to church, we shouldn't be walking around thinking, man, I wonder if somebody's going to try to knock my feet out from underneath of me. I don't need that. I need somebody to lean on. And Hunter and Jake did a beautiful job of showing us how that's supposed to be. And we're in the last part of verse 2. It says, forbearing one another. I heard about a couple of boys that were fighting on the school playground, and the teacher grabbed both of them by the nape of the neck and brought them into her classroom and sat them down, and she said, okay, why were you doing that, and why were you fighting, and tell me about that. And she looked at one of the boys and said, you first. And he said, well, it's real simple, teacher. The fight started when he hit me back. Duh, welcome to church, huh? No, we need to come and forbear one another. Not criticize one another. I mean, I've been in churches where it was, you could just sense the criticism. I almost wanted to start by standing up and saying, well, I'm going to call on Sister Agnes to come and lead us in a word of criticism before we start. Hope you don't have an Agnes here. Look what he says, forbearing one another. How? In what? In love. In God's kind of love. That's that agape kind of love. Forbearing one another, holding one another up in love. Didn't I read somewhere where by this shall all men know that you are my disciples if you have love one for another? Why don't you just turn to somebody next to you and start with a smile? Let's practice that. Let's practice that part, okay? Show your teeth. Now, you elderly people, leave them in. Just show them. Just show them, okay? Let's start with that, and now turn to somebody next to you and say, I love you. Go ahead. Here's the last thing I want you to see. These are four words of Paul exhorting us. Has to do with your calling, your character, your concern, and your connection. Your connection, and that's verse 3. Endeavoring to keep. I love that word, endeavoring. I don't know why. I just like how it sounds. Endeavoring. Say that with me. Endeavoring. Say it again. Don't you like that? That word endeavoring means to use speed, to make effort, to be prompt, earnest, to labor. Let me tell you something. There's a lack of endeavoring among Christians today. We need to be endeavoring. I think I'm going to get to the point where I just start saying that. When somebody says, how you doing? I'm endeavoring. I like that. I want to be prompt. I want to be quick. I want to make effort. I want to be earnest. I want to labor. I'm endeavoring. Why don't we do that together? Why don't we endeavor? You okay with that? This is yes. Yeah, let's endeavor as a church. Let's be quick to, I don't know if I'm reading it in context here. Let's be quick to walk worthy of the vocation. By the way, what is your vocation? So let's endeavor. Let's endeavor to do that. To walk in unity, to walk worthy of the vocation. Now, look at verse 3. He says, endeavoring to keep. And that word keep means to hold on, to maintain. But look what he says, endeavoring to hold on, to maintain the what? Everybody show your shirt. Yeah. Let's not just wear shirts, let's be one. The unity. The unity. And that means oneness. That's what it is. Let's endeavor to maintain, to hold on to that oneness of the Spirit. That oneness, the unity of the Spirit in the bond. And that word bond has to do with a joint. It's what ties this with this. It's a joint tie. And it has to do with a ligament, a bond that holds us together. And so we need to have that type of bond. But now look what it says. In the bond of what? Peace. And that means peace and quietness and at oneness. In the bond of peace. There's this lady that walked into a gun shop one day and said to the clerk, I'd like to buy a small revolver for someone at church. And the clerk said, did that person suggest or specify what size or make? And she said, oh no, he doesn't even know I'm going to shoot him yet. In the bond of what? Peace. Endeavoring. Making effort to hold on to the unity, the oneness of the Spirit that binds us or bonds us together in that bond of peace. Come in here. Get close here. Get close. I've got an exhortation. Why don't we get together? Let me pray with you.